गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। श्रुति स्मृति पुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्।
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्तोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्। परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे। वीतराग भयक्रोधा मन्मया माम् उपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मद्भावमागताः। कर्मणि अकर्म यः पश्येत् अकर्मणि च कर्म यः स बुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु स युक्तः कृत्स्नकर्मकृत्। ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्महविः ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यं ब्रह्मकर्म समाधिना। श्रेयान् द्रव्यमयात् यज्ञात् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तप सर्वं कर्म अखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते। तत्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनः तत्त्वदर्शिनः। यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यसि आत्मनि अथो मयि। तस्मात् अज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञानासीनात्मनः छित्त्वैनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत। न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते। नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैव सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः। ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः।
Thank you, Rakesh. That's very nice. So we are on chapter 7.
Finish 12.
Finished 12. So 13. Oh, right. Yes, 12 was this very interesting and delightful verse. Bijam. Yes. Right. So Bhagavan is explaining his manifestations in all that we see in the world around us, starting from 7, or even before that, in fact, starting from verse 4 itself till 12, there is a complete understanding of how to perceive the Lord in the world of the senses. And I think 12 summarizes everything, verses 4 through here. Ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasaha tamasaha cha ye matta eva etitan vidhi na teshu te mai. Know these to proceed from me alone. And since everything that is manifest, vyakta, is of the nature of the three gunas, so Bhagavan says, all those proceed from me. I am not in them, but they are in me. And there he says, I'm not subject to them as the transmigrating jivas are. That's a commentary. On the contrary, they are subject to me. And of course, that has to be understood in the notion of Saguna, Ishvara, saying that. Okay. Any questions or comments on these first 12 verses before we move on? And then somebody can read verse 13. Okay. There are no questions, then we'll read verse 13.
I can try.
Please, yeah.
त्रिभिर्गुणे मयैर्भावे रेभिः सर्वमिदं जगत् मोहितं नाभिजानाति मामेभ्यः परमव्ययम्.
Thank you. Very nice. So since of late, I've been paying attention to some of these points about chanting. It struck me that one of the difficulties in reading some of the verses is where to split the sandhi, right? And if we don't split it at the right place, the cadence of the four padas does not fall properly. For instance, here, I think very beautifully you advance prepared or recognized that Abhi Sarvamidam Jagat gives the right second pada, right? So that's why Tribir Gunamair Bhavair Abhi Sarvamidam Jagat. Yes, there's definitely a difficulty, and I am trying to see what is the best way. Some verses are easier to split, in some the sandhi appears like this, the way it is printed. Anyway, just a sidelight.
That's a main problem. That is my main problem.
Mahesh, yes. So, yeah, you're right. Where to split. And I think in that respect, this understanding of the chandas can be useful because as we say, repeat, you see that there is a natural break somewhere after so many syllables, right?
Mm-hmm.
So actually, if you just say it like a tune, La 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 la. Right? It's flipped after that. Right? Uh, and there is it depends on hrasva dirgha, short and long syllables.
Uh-huh.
So actually, if you count out the syllables, that might help. I have
Yeah,
not
I
not
need a
done.
crash course. I I will need to go to the crash course to Sanskrit.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, definitely. But also just by reading. The another way is just practicing helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. So Tribihi Gunamayaihi Bhavaihi. So Tribihi is threefold. Um, Gunamaya is that which is consisting of the gunas of Prakriti. And it is all in the instrumental case, right? Plural. Um, so Bhavaihi Ebihi. Um, Sarvam idam jagat. Mohitam. That all has to be taken in one piece. Sarvam. So um, on account of or through the causal influence of these three kinds of gunas, constituents of Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, these bhavas have deluded Sarvam idam jagat mohitam. All that is, the whole world is deluded. Na abhijanati, and fails to recognize me, mam ebhyaha paramavyayam. Me meaning the Lord, that immutable avyayam, reality, param, beyond these three gunas. So this is actually in one verse again, the entire truth of all Vedanta is contained in this one verse. You don't have to read the whole Gita at all. If you understand this one verse, you can put away the book. That's the power of the Gita. That's it. We don't need to read beyond chapter 7:13. What is needed is to understand this verse at every level, beyond intellectually, experientially. That's the challenge. And so what we do is the process of, again, Shravana, right? We have to first listen, and somebody has to tell you this, right? If you go and tell an ordinary person on the street this English translation, what reaction are you going to get? If they have power, they might put you, gentlemen in white lab coats might come and take you away, right? So, but this is the sadness. In a place called Bharatavarsh, at a certain time, this was not considered unreasonable. The Bhagavad Gita was read in so many parts of the country, right? It was not considered unreasonable, right? The question is, who is the lunatic in the room, right? And so what is considered sane and normal in the external world, Bhagavan is saying, is a delusion, right? But if our mind is constantly in the sense world, this will sound like idiocy and lunacy, right? And in fact, now in that physical location called Bharatavarsh, this is the same thing is happening, correct? If you go to the urban areas and you ask people whether they have ever read the Bhagavad Gita and the original, they have not. A very large proportion who are born in Hindu families have not. And so now it has become nothing special about a spatial location or a time, right? What is our relation to it? It's a very individual, personal relationship. But coming back to the verse. So this is a verse of absolute Gyan. This is Brahma Gyan, said from the perspective of the Lord himself having chosen to embody himself and giving Upadesh, right? So it has to be understood from that perspective. And it is a verse that should appear completely contrary to your common sense in the world of senses. It should. It is. Okay. And this is the difficulty of the greatest philosophy, is that if you actually engage in it, it should disturb you. If it leaves you unmoved, then you're a stone, right? This is the kind of thing that should poke your sense of reality. It should disturb you to a point that you want to know it experientially. You want to know whether it's true. It is only to that person that this will have any effect. Otherwise, it will be like a buffalo. You beat it and it does nothing. It's a buffalo, right? You can whack it as hard as you want. It's a buffalo, right? But we are not buffaloes. We are human beings. We're endowed with a greater intelligence. So if somebody said this, how many years ago? Okay? And it's resounding through this continent, through the Indian subcontinent for so many thousands of years. Is it bunk or is it true? You have only two choices, right? Either this is true, and then you have to resolve it within your mind, or it is bunk, and you should go about in the world of the senses and have a fun time and not worry about yourself. Take this and put it on the trash, right? That is the urgency. If that urgency of engagement is not there with the text, yeah, I mean, it still has an effect, but it can take a very long time, right? Correct, right? And since we all have a pretty high opinion of our intelligence, don't we? Yes or no? You don't think you're intelligent? Come on. Everybody should think they're intelligent. God has given you this intelligence, right? Human being is the acme of creation, yes or no? Human being has dominated the world. Human being has explored space. Human being has complete dominion over earth, water, fire, weather, even almost, right? So human being is intelligent, correct? So if this human being is intelligent and refuses to engage with something, then what can you say? So one has to engage. So how do you engage? So the engagement is in the Vedantic idea, Shravana Manana Nididhyasana. First, you have to listen to it. It is by virtue of great merit that one gets to listen to this, even. Okay, so that first thing we have to understand. This birth in this body, in a family where these texts were revered, right? It's not the case. There are how many billion people on earth, right? And not all of them are of the Hindu faith to begin with, right? You could have been born in any other faith, and these words are not there in any other faith, right? First point. So this birth in a human body, in a tradition of Sanatana Dharma, then having the great fortune to actually understand the language of Sanskrit a little bit, to the point that one can at least read in translation. These are all great blessings. So then what should one do with it, right? Should one just, let it be, or should one engage with it? And the point is, what Bhagavan is through the whole 18 chapters is showing different ways to engage with it, right? So he's saying, I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you this again and again, is what he's telling Arjuna. From chapter 2, I've been telling you the truth. How are you going to engage with this, right? And that's why the Klaibyam Masmagama, first thing he says is, do not yield to unmanliness. Do not think that I cannot engage with this. You can engage with it, right? The reason Bhagavan is giving this Upadesh to all human beings, as he outlined, is because he thinks that it can have an effect, right? Obviously, he believes that there is, for every human being, in an instant, this truth about him can be known. And he has mentioned that also. He says, so many jnana tapasa, right? Remember, there was a verse we read before. Many have come to me following this path, etc. So that being the case, this is a very powerful verse. So Shravana, first hearing, then Manana, then contemplating. As you contemplate, then this question arises, okay, so what are these gunas, right? How does one get to know them more intimately, right? And that then Nididhyasana, which is a meditation on the gunas themselves. And that part in Jnana Yoga has a direct relationship to Raja Yoga, where we commenced first with Hatha Yoga Pradipika, learning to do asana, pranayam, mudra, samadhi pad, 4 parts. That is the stepping stone to Raja Yoga, that is Hatha Yoga. Raja Yoga in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, there we practice Ashtanga, which is yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Right? In that procedure of dharana, dhyana, samadhi, which are the antaranga, 3 pieces, trayam ekatra samyama, that is called samyama. Samyama is the way, is a means, is a technique of knowing these subtle things. And in the process of meditation, there is meditation done on the gunas themselves. So after Bhuta Shuddhi, which is a particular yogic practice, the practice of meditation on the gunas is done. And then these gunas are understood for what they are in their essence directly. So this is the path I have explained to you of Raja Yoga. And the Advaita Vedanta Jnana Yoga that I mentioned, Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana, presupposes a competence in Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga, according to Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya in his Prasthana Granthas. So Jnana Yoga is directly accessible to those few of highly purified intellect, of which I am not. Therefore, I started with Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga and followed the common path, so to speak, right? And in spite of that, definitely this delusion happens every day, every minute. So the power of the Lord is very great. In spite of Guru's blessings and grace, this power of the Shakti of the Lord to delude through the gunas is very, very great. And the only thing that one can say is, by acknowledging that, that is itself the first step towards wisdom. First step is acknowledging the power, the Shakti of the Lord. So, Tribihi Gunamayi Bhavai Ebhihi Sarvam Idam Jagat Mohitam Na Abhijanati Mam Ebhya Param Avyayam. So, not knowing me, the immutable reality beyond. Now, there is another way. This way I described is the of the Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga. But Bhakti Marg is also open. So to someone who applies themselves diligently to the worship of the Lord in Saguna form, directly also the fruition and culmination of that bhakti is knowledge, Gyan, Brahma Gyan, that the Lord bestows in his infinite grace immediately. So all these paths lead to the same end. And the experience of the fruition of those paths is their unity and the same goal. So the fruit of bhakti is Gyan and the fruit of Gyan is bhakti. But when they are incomplete, they seem to be different. So as long as one sees bhakti as different from Gyan, that means that bhakti has not reached fruition yet, or that Gyan has not reached the fruition yet. In the end, they're identical. There is no difference. Within this bhulok, a person who has that Gyan can only have bhakti. And a person who has that bhakti must have that Gyan. So there flips two sides of the same coin. Let us see what Bhagavan Shankaracharya has to say, which will probably be more profound, obviously, than what I blabbered about. So, Tribihi iti. Tribihi gunamaihi guna vikaraihi ragadvesha moha prakaraihi bhavehi padarthaihi ebihi yatoktam yatoktaihi sarvam idam pranijatam jagat mohitam. So, here Bhagavan Shankaracharya is beautifully and mercifully referring to a part of Raj Yoga which I mentioned. So he talks about Raga Dvesha, right? So in Yoga Sutra, as you know, there are these things called the kleshas, and they are, you may say, taints. They are what cloud our understanding. They color our understanding in a way that is contrary to the truth, and they are avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So first one is avidya, asmita, we will come back to those. But raga, dvesha is very easy to understand. Raga is attraction, dvesha is revulsion. So very simply, we are attracted to things that make us happy and we are revulsed by certain things. That very push-pull is the product of this moham, or the delusion caused by the gunas. Okay, this is the, and they are very difficult. These are very common, very difficult to overcome. At least personally, at least I can tell you that. You know, whenever something is pleasing to the senses, of course it is, the mind is attracted to it, wants to repeat it. There is no doubt about it. Anything that pleasing smell, a pleasing taste, a pleasing sound, a pleasing touch, a pleasing sight, the mind wants to repeat it, right? And then those that are not pleasant, immediately the mind wants to reject those. Right? This is very natural, but yet a product of delusion, of ignorance. So, tribihi gunamayihi guna vikare. Guna vikare means due to the transformation of the gunas. Beautiful, yes. Due to the transformation of the constituents. This English translation luckily accorded with my translation as well. Ragadvesha, mohadi prakaraihi. Moha adi. So, those moham is that delusion. Adi prakaraihi, and so forth. This entire world of living beings, yebihi yathoktaihi sarvam idam pranijatam. So living beings, those in whom prana flows, pranijatam. Jagat, so that is called jagat. Yat kinchit jagatyam jagat, that which moves. Mohitam is deluded. Devoid, so how does it say? Avivekatam apaditam sat. Aviveka. So viveka is discrimination. Aviveka is non-discriminating. What is this discrimination? In this sense, meant in the highest sense, nitya anitya vastu viveka. That which is eternal and that which is transient. So on account of the inability to discriminate between that which is eternal and that which is transient, apaditam, deprived of the power to discriminate, avivekatam apaditam sat, na abhijanati, does not know me, mam, ebhyaha, yathoktebhyaha, as beyond and as other than the constituents. Gunebhyaha param. So, ebhyaha yathok, these yatha uktebhyaha have been spoken of, gunebhyaha, those gunas, param, beyond them. Vyatiriktam vilakshanam cha avyayam, devoid of states like birth. Wait a minute. Vyatiriktam vilakshanam cha avyayam, unchanging. Vyayarahitam. Avyayam means that which is devoid of change. Unchanging is devoid of change. Janma adi sarva bhava vikara varjitam ityartha. Devoid of states like birth. So there are shad vikara, right? In Tattva Bodh, Bhagavan talks about the 6 characteristics of things that are changeable. And they start with birth, transformation, growth, etc., all the way old age, death. 6 vikaras. So that is a specific point here he's making. Vyatiriktam vilakshanam cha avyayam, as beyond and as other than the constituents. So, katham punaha daivim etam trigunatmikam vaishnavim mayam atikramanti iti uchyate. Now, how do people go beyond this divine all-pervasive power of delusion consisting of the 3 constituents? Beautiful question, right? So, having set up the stage beautifully, the next, the commentary says, the next question is, how does one go past this power of delusion consisting of the 3 constituents? So, who is going to read the next verse?
I can go.
Please.
Daivi hyosha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite.
Yes. Daivi hiesha. Hi esha. Daivi hi esha gunamayi. This divine power, which is of the constituents, gunamayi, mama, my power, maya, it's called maya, duratyaya, is very difficult to cross. Mameva ye prapadyante, those who surrender themselves to me, mayam etam tarantite, those who surrender themselves exclusively to me pass beyond this maya. And that was the point I was saying about the bhakti yoga, right? I said one can either proceed through hatha, raja, jnana, or the direct path is directly surrendering to the Lord. So that's Islam, by the way. Islam means surrender, right? Right? So Islam is also contained in Bhagavad Gita. So those who surrender, mameva ye prapadyante, mayam etam tarantite. Right? And that is the surrender of the very high sense, the very notion of ego. Of course, very difficult. So let us see what the translation is. Daivi iti. Daivi devasya mama ishvarasya vishnoho swabhava bhuta iti. So the divine power. So mama ishvarasya, my as Lord Ishvara, Vishnoho as Lord Vishnu, who is all pervading. That power, devasya mama ishvarasya, the divine power, div devasya, right? That swabhava bhuta, which is his very nature, just as the nature of fire is to burn, similarly the nature of the Lord is this maya, the lordship, is this power. He yasmat esha yatokta gunamayi mama maya duratyaya, very difficult, dukkhena atyayaha atikramanam, that is it is difficult to cross, hard to cross over. Atikramanam yasyaha sad duratyaya. So that is like a nirukta piece explaining the word duratyaya. Through great pain or sadness or difficulty, dukkhena atyayaha atikramanam, it is crossed. In these circumstances, tatra evam sati sarva dharman parityajya mameva mayavinam svat atmabhutam sarvatmana ye prapadyante te mayam etam sarvabhuta mohinim taranti atikramanti. So tatra evam sati, that being the case, sarva dharman parityajya, so giving up all other dharmas to the exclusive devotion, mam eva mayavinam swa atma bhutam, the one that is residing in the heart, sarvatmana, and also in all others, those who surrender themselves, they overcome this Maya. So, resorting to the Lord as the only refuge superior to all other dharmas. And in fact, this in the Vishnu Sahasranamam, Yudhishthira asks Shantanavam, right? Son of Shantanu, right? What does he say? Ko dharma sarva dharmanam bhavatah paramo matah kim japan muchyate jantur janma samsara bandhana. Correct? Yudhishthira Vacha, then the next verse. What dharma of all the dharmas, sarva dharmana, bhavatah paramo, do you think is the greatest? Paramo mataha, in your opinion, what is the greatest dharma? Ko dharma sarva dharmana, bhavatah paramo mataha. Kim japan, by japa of whom? Muchyate, is released. Jantuhu, these pranis. Janma samsara bandhanat, by the bondage of birth, living through samsara, death, rebirth. Right? So, same point. Here again, he's saying, through this surrender. In these circumstances, those who renouncing all conventional norms of life, that is sarvadharman, wholeheartedly surrender themselves to me, the wielder of Maya. So, that one is Maya Vinam. And their very self, Swa Atma Bhutam, pass beyond this all deluding power. Sarva Atmana ye prapadyante te mayam. Wholeheartedly. Sarva Atmana ye prapadyante. Wholeheartedly surrender. They pass beyond this all deluding power. The idea is that they are liberated from the bondage. Te samsara bandhanat muchyante ityartha, which is quite charmingly the same verse coming in the Vishnu Sahasranam. Right? Which is Janma samsara bandhanat. So, they are liberated from the bondage of transmigratory life. So, in the Christian tradition, I believe, my knowledge of it is quite weak, but I believe somewhere Jesus says that to pass through the eye of a needle is very, that's the metaphor used to reach the Lord, right? And the idea is that it is something about rich people and how hard it is for them to pass, as hard to pass a camel through the eye of the needle or something. It's a very appropriate metaphor because this surrender business is that hard, right? To minimize one's egoic perception so small that it can pass through the eye of the needle. That is same thing is called Bindu Vedana in our yogic practice. Right? Very difficult, but that is what Bhagavan is referring to. Okay. Now, but at the same time, to be fair, one has to have this. The first thing that has to dawn is this Janma Samsara Bandhanat hard? So, we can draw up a report card. On the plus side, we can put all the pleasures. On the minus side, we can put down what we think are the sorrows, and we can add it up, right? And I mean, why should one trust that this Janma Samsara Bandhan is hard, right? So, any comments or questions?
I have two comments.
Yes.
So one of them is the objects of senses. They are sometimes responsible for providing us pleasure, and they are the same which are responsible for providing us pain. So there's I would not classify them under one category. They are neither pros nor cons for me. They belong to both categories. And then secondly, I was just thinking that this janma for me is definitely better. I don't remember my previous births, but this janma is not that difficult, and I have the opportunity to, as you were saying, of Shravan and Manan. So maybe I did not have that in previous birth. So I think um, eventually I would like to be released. So
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for, I love the yes, very, very honest, and I would say accurate. Does anybody want to respond to that or react to that or add to that, contradict that, offer something tangential?
So, Dr. Shankar, one quick thought came going through the two of these verses. So here, when we are deluded with Maya,
Uh-huh.
and then we don't see the things clearly. So those are the kind of cloud, right?
Right.
The mask. So this kind of when I remember in the no, not the Katha Upanishad. What is the shortest one? Oh, come on, I forgot the name. Shortest Upanishad.
Mandukya?
Yeah, Mandukya Upanishads in the commentary in the Gaudapada says if you see it, then it is false, right?
Uh-huh.
So kind of if we observe anything in this world, or if we sense, then it should be false, because the real consciousness or real knowledge is beyond our understanding of the sense, and which is the interplay or the interplay of gunas in this world, right?
I am listening.
Right.
I'm holding my my assent because I'm listening.
Right.
I'm listening because that statement cannot be said to be true or not true.
Which one?
What you just said.
Yeah, if you say okay, yeah, I'm just trying to connect, and
Okay.
I don't know.
Uh-huh. So if we go back to this business, so we all know we were born, right? So is our birth a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, good thing. I mean, already born, so.
It depends on the mind, right? If your mind is so inclined, it can recollect all the good things that happened from the time of birth and say it's a good thing. And if it can recollect all the bad things, it may add it up and say it's a bad thing.
but it's also a bad thing because this janma happened. If the previous birth was enough to provide liberation, then this janma would not have happened.
Sure. That's also one. Yes, definitely one way. Absolutely. Yes. So I think ultimately the answer to this question is very personal. And I would not advocate that. That's why I'm just listening and not really saying one way or the other, right? Because I do think it's very personal, and there is a validity to every perception. See, Lord has shown a light through each of you, through each of us, right? So there is a validity to each perception, correct? What we do with that perception is then the only question, right? So Racy brought up a good point. She said, I don't remember my previous births. That's accurate, right? There is a practice in yoga which says we can have glimpses of what our tendencies are. Aparigraha sthairye janma katanta sambodha. Through the practice of this aparigraha, the reason of one's birth becomes clear, right? So for instance, in meditation, one can discover deep traces of characteristics in one which have impelled birth, right? And again, there is a very nice discussion in Yoga Sutra on that as to how tadvipake jati bhoga, etc., right? Experience, birth experience, etc. These are said to be happening on account of the karma ashaya, or the repository of karma, which is what impels birth. And so again, we are entering this part which I say is a question of provisional acceptance, correct? So when we encounter something that is not within the realm of our experience, we have two choices. One is we can reject it out of hand, and that's also fine. Or one can provisionally accept it and proceed forward, right? So to the extent that what is said in the Shruti, Smriti, Agama here, right? It is considered a valid form of knowing, a praman in the Yoga Sutra, correct? Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Agama. As we grow older, and this is where old people have a lot to wisdom to give us, right? So my general feeling, and you can contradict me if I'm wrong, is that when the body is young, the balance of enjoyment is greater from the senses and disappointments and sadness from the senses is less. Around middle age, it sort of evens out. As one approaches old age, the senses cause more pain than pleasure. And we should now, I'll ask the oldest person, I'll ask my mother if she wants to give any light. She's got more experience than any of us. What do you say, Mom? I don't know if she knows how to unmute it. She's still. So anyway, we might have to get that feedback offline. But let's trace our own lives, okay? So let's take a very simple example. When we were all younger, 10 years ago, I enjoyed sports a lot, okay? So love to play squash, go downhill skiing, all right? There's a tremendous pleasure in exercising the body and pushing it to the limits and enjoying the thrill of coming down on down a mountain, right? But then occasionally accidents happen, right? You slip, you fall off, and when you're young, you can pick yourself right back up and go at it again. Yes or no?
Yes.
Right.
Sorry, you asked a question.
Ah, yes. Did you hear the question, Mom?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I
please.
put it on mute, I think. So I probably, when I started singing, you wouldn't have heard me.
Yes, please.
It is true that as you grow older, your sense enjoyments become less attractive than they were at one time. I mean, for small instance, I will give you. At one point of time, I used to be so fond of this Hindi film music that if I heard a familiar song on the radio, I would run to it to catch the words. And now it is, I mean, I'm not bothered if I whether hear that music or not. That enthusiasm is gone. Now I'm more into classical music. Even that, sometimes I don't have the energy to sit for a long time and listen to the full concert.
Right.
So it changes for a period of time. What pleases you at one time doesn't please you at a later stage in life. I think that's what you are trying to say.
Right.
Maybe.
No, exactly. And I think that's where the benefit of real experience we can gain from our elders, right? Because they have walked the path that we have not walked yet, right? All said and done, Mother has 32 more years of experience in this world, right? Which is tremendous. It's not something that one can fully anticipate even, right? So thank you. So I was giving you the more medium version of my experience, which is that when you play sports, sometimes what happens is, this happened to me, I think around the 30s, is the first experience that I could not push myself and the body would not react in the same way. So the mind is wanting to go for the shot. The mind knows, I'm talking about a squash game. The mind knows how much time it will take to get the body there, but the body does not react it fast. It is just not able to, right? Then you have a huge muscle sprain or something, you're laid out, and then the doctor advises you that, no, I don't think you should be doing this. I think you should listen to your body, right? This continues. In the 40s, there is a bigger change. In the 50s, there's a bigger change. And progressively, we are beginning to understand something about the body, right? This is within the realm of everyone's experience. And so then you can extrapolate that, right? So of course we have two choices. You can still reject everything that is said out of hand. There's nothing, nobody's stopping you from that. But perhaps if you're so inclined to accept it, you can also take that these are a reflection of what they're saying, that there is a vikar, there is this shad vikar going on to the body. This thing which I think as me is not constant. It's constantly changing. So then maybe there is some truth to this. So let me examine a little more. Maybe provisionally I can accept what Bhagavan is saying, that indeed this samsara is a bandhan, right? It is a knot. It is tying me in some way, my consciousness, that it is subjecting me to this birth, etc. And then if your mind is open to the Yoga Sutra, there it says that, listen, this thing called karma ashaya, this repository of karma, is what impels birth. And then its enjoyment, experience, etc. So until and unless that one is able to examine and eliminate those samskaras that cause this birth, until then freedom, kaivalyam, is not at hand. That is the received wisdom from our agamas. And each person can apply pratyaksha, their direct experience, and see whether this makes sense. Anumana, by analogy. We are now taking this older person's words as somehow by, what is the, for Anuman is by analogy, right? Huh?
Inference.
Inference, correct. Sorry, you're right.
There is
By
smoke, there must be fire, Rabbi.
Right. Inference. So if this happens to that person, since this body of mine looks very much like theirs, and it'll probably happen to this one too, right? So this is the yogic application of logic. Pratyaksha, my direct experience, anumana, inference, and then of course, agama, which are the scriptures. So then, but of course, Bhagavan in this time that Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya was giving this bhashya he wrote, people did not question these things. It was well acknowledged in the cultural memory of our great Vedic civilization that this is a fact. It was not up for debate. That's a plus and minus with that. The downside with not debating it is many people may not be inspired to actually find out for themselves through their own experience. The upside of not questioning it is that one can proceed to the next step. So it's how you take it, right? So then he says, Yadi tvam prapannaha mayam etam taranti, kasmat tvam eva sarvena prapadyante iti uchyate. So beautiful. I mean, the Gita is just absolute delight and joy to read because it's an exercise in logic. Okay. So then the bhashya is particularly beautiful in that it plays that logic between the verses, right? So Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya says, so if those who surrender themselves to you pass beyond Maya, then why don't all surrender to you? Answer, Uchyate. So please, next one verse in the mystery novel, who will read?
I can go.
Please.
न मां दुष्कृतिनो मूढः प्रपद्यन्ते नराधमः मायया पहृतज्ञाना आसुरं भावमाश्रितः.
Beautiful. Thank you, Shiva. That is very nice. Na mam dushkritino mudhaha prapadyante nara adhamaha mayaya apakrita jnana asuram bhavamasritaha. I find this quite delightful because it's true. Na mam, to me, dushkritino, evildoers, mudhaha, deluded ones, prapadyante, they do not surrender to me. Nara adhamaha, the lowest among men. Maya, through this Maya, apahrita jnana, robbed of their wisdom, asuram, having demonic qualities, bhavam asrita, they assume a demoniac attitude. So, I mean, this is true. Short answer. Because I can tell you through direct experience. Because when my wisdom was base and wicked and doing evil, I did not surrender to the Lord. That's all. So I didn't have to search very far to find this to be true, because it was patently available within myself. To me, this is a very easy verse, because the Asuri Bhav can be easily recognized. So do you all have a lot of difficulty with this verse?
So, Dr. Shankar, so little knowledge is necessary, right, to surrender, or knowledge to some extent is needed. Yes, that's why attracted. Then we surrender, right? Like it's hard to surrender.
Nice. Very difficult question. Let me think about it. Actually, I think not. I would rather say that the natural state is oneness with the Lord, and it is through avidya that we get separated from the Lord, and then think we are regaining that natural state through vidya. So the very notion that some knowledge is needed is because of the original avidya. Our natural state is one with the Lord.
That is why we experience all these tensions, I think, because we are not being for ourselves.
In a true sense, yes, not our natural self.
All this dukkham is due to that.
Mahesh, was if it is not satisfactory, then we can discuss more.
Yeah, well,
I think I understand what you're saying.
right.
I think what you're saying is that if one takes the situation of a human born already, right? We take that as the starting point. From that starting point, yes, because there is the root avidya that caused the birth itself, indeed, some knowledge seems to need to be acquired, right? But again, I told you, this knowledge is not like the knowledge in universities and books. It is the removal of ignorance. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it is more appropriate to say that it is a regaining of the natural state. Right?
Right, yeah.
Shall we read the commentary and then maybe, yeah, I think that's a good place to actually stop for today. Namam iti. Namam Parameshwaram Narayanam. I also like this because I like the fact that Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya put both those epithets of the Lord right next to each other so that people don't get into the Shaiva Vaishnava debate again and again. Parameshwaram is something a Shaivite will say. Narayanam is something a Vaishnava will say. So Bhagavan said, Parameshwaram Narayanam. I am the Supreme Lord, I am Narayana. No difference. Dushkrutinaha Papakarinaha Mudaha Prapadyante Naradhamaha Naranam Madhya Adama. Okay, so Na Mam Parameshwaram Narayanam Dushkritana. To me, the Supreme Lord Narayana. Dushkritinaha Papakarina. Who are these Dushkritina, the evildoers? They are those who do sins, Papakarina. And I've mentioned again and again, sin is the product of ignorance. Right? Dushkritinaha. The Mudhaha. deluded ones. Prapadyante, not prapadyante, because they don't surrender. Nara adhamaha, the sort of nirukta of that is naranam madhye adhamaha te naradhamaha, right? Among men, the ones who are the lowest. Nikrishtaha te cha mayaya apahrita jnanaha. Of knowledge they are deprived due to maya. Sambhushita jnanaha asuram bhavam sambhushita jnanaha. So they assume or resort to the attitude of demons. Himsa, marked by violence. Asuram bhavam is himsa. Anrita, falsehood. Adi, etc. Lakshanam, which have those characteristics. And so they are ashritaha. They are established in these behaviors. Ye punaha narottamaha punya karmanaha. On the contrary, the best among men are those who do good. So we will pause there. 15. Because the next verse is a very delightful verse. And it's a very special verse. So maybe we can start with 16. Bhagavan having beautifully explained here, we did not cover many verses, but they were all very nice verses. So, you know, a very nice example of what is his nature. Verse 13, probably we should, I should indicate which ones again we can memorize and etc. So 13 is particularly beautiful. And then, yeah, we will start again at 16 next time. Any closing comments or questions on what we covered today?
Dr. Shankar,
Yes.
I have a remark about
Yes,
the
please.
discussion we had after 14th verse about the importance of this sensual world.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I sometimes think that maybe it's the importance of this world, it doesn't concern itself with the pains and pleasures and they balancing themselves out. I mean, I sometimes, because whatever arguments we will give about it will be based on emotions or based on intellect, and which is all, I mean, sometimes it seems also primitive. Because, I mean, all we have seen is this, but there is this promise of something which is beyond this. And this is also primitive. And why would someone want to live with something primitive? This is the impression that I get sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, that's very nice. That's very high-minded. It's very beautiful, right? Yeah. That indicates an interest in the deeper knowledge. Yes. Yeah. On the other hand, so this is where we say jnana vijnana. So the initial instinct towards higher knowledge undoubtedly is inspired or indicated by, as you were mentioning, a desire for a higher knowledge than, say, the primitive sense knowledge, right? But there is this thing called vijnana, and this is an important part of Tantra, which, and I particularly emphasize this, because our beautiful Vedic philosophy is not one of eventually rejecting the world at all, but to come back and see all this also as the Lord only. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? So the inward journey leads to that higher knowledge, because that is why in the Upanishads it says, many times in the Veda, not even in the Upanishad, in the Veda itself, Jiji Vishet Shatam Samaha. May we live 100 years. Jeev is the word to live. Jiji Vishet is a beautiful reduplicated aorist form, technical word in Veda, which is a particular tense which is may we live, Jijivishet, Shatam Sama, 100 years, right? Why would the rishis say, may we live 100 years, right? If indeed all the, no, because in their eventual brilliance of their understanding, they celebrated all the natural world also. After that knowledge is gained and the right way of living is understood, even the experience of the senses are celebrations, right? In the yajnas, we again and again say, we worship, we give offering to Indra, right? The beautiful Indra is the lord of the senses, Indriyonka lord, right? In the dharmic experience of senses is the poetry of the Lord itself.
Sandhyavandanathala kuda, even in Sandhyavandanathala, this mantra will come. Jive ma shatashat.
Yes, in the Madhyanikam, that's right. It comes, it says, Asatyena rajasa vatmano niveshna pranam matyam cha hiranyena savita rathena adhiyati bhavanati pashyam.
Jive ma shatashat.
Chinto jyotiruttamam yandivata suram jinjayam. Chakshur mitra sevan syamya pradhyava pratyantraksham suyya. Pashyema Satam, Jivema Sharadashatam, Nandama Sharadashatam, Modama Sharadashatam, Bhavama Sharadashatam, Shrunavama Sharadashatam, Prabravama Sharadashatam, Ajita Asyama Sharadashatam. That's right. So, Pashyema Sharadashatam, may we see 100 years. All the Indriyas, Jivema Sharadashatam, live. Nandama, may we delight. Modama, may we, again, Nanda and Moda, joy. Sharadashatam. Bhavama, yes, maybe exist 100 years. Shrunavama, maybe hear. Prabravama, maybe speak again 100 years. Ajitasya, maybe be maybe be unconquered, right? Victorious for 100 years. So, what our rishis are telling us is that if we know the right way of living, right, then one sees the glory of the Lord in all the sense pleasures, in everything. And then the Janma Samsara Bandhan doesn't have any hold on such a master. Right?
So it becomes a game then.
It becomes like, you got it, exactly. Just
Doesn't
like
bite you.
when we play that Candy Crush, or what is that, Candy Land with the kids, or Snakes and Ladders, right? So we play, and yeah, you go up, you come down, and you're not affected by it. You happily close the game and do something else after that. So anyway, thank you. Thank you for the comment. I appreciate it, Shalom.
No, I just crossed my mind when you said that.
Right.
When you recite Sandhyavandanam Mantram, I heard this.
Yes.
So I said it very similar to what you said. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. Acha, so shall we say Shanti Mantram and plan to meet again? Have a lovely rest of your weekend, and we will meet again next Saturday. Om Tacham Yora Vrinimahe Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivihi Swastirastunaham Swastirmanushabhyaham Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste everyone. See you.